Where China's concerned, how does success look like?
Well, I think the significance of these games was never as clear as it was in 2008, when those games were clearly seen as China's coming out party on the world stage. I think with this game's success would be probably controlling COVID. I think that's really important because that would be a big contribution to China's effort to rectify the damage done to its national image by the fact that COVID started here. And of course, if they can have a very well organized games and make people focus on the sports and forget the politics, that's probably a goal as well, which would serve China's bigger purpose of increasing its so-called soft power around the world.
There's been so much controversy, Susan. I'm wondering, will the Olympics change China? Will China change the Olympics?
Well, I think both, but China doesn't get changed by the Olympics in the way that the China critics hope, I think. But even so, we do have to consider that the organization of a mega event involves a huge amount of interaction with international actors. And so that process does help China hook up with the international community, as they like to say. And the media scrutiny probably helps China's leaders better gauge the opinion of China in the outside world. And then on the other hand, it's pretty clear that after 2008, the International Olympic Committee, the IOC, did feel that it needed to come up with a better way of dealing with these criticisms that different countries have human rights abuses, and what is the IOC doing about it. So gradually in steps, they have adopted measures to deal with this. And in the upcoming host city contracts, there's actually a human rights clause. But there's not one in the Chinese contract, so we won't get to see how that would have affected China.
Susan, what does it mean for athletes who were born abroad now switching to represent China? Tell us, because this was something which was unheard of in 2008.
Exactly. Yeah, I think this is a really exciting development because it goes to show that in the end, this is not the China of 2008. Although actually the first athlete who did that did compete in 2008, and it was an equestrian in three-day eventing who did have some Hong Kong connections. But that was an exception because it was China's Olympic Games and they wanted an athlete in every event, and they didn't have any equestrian athletes. But he then went on to represent China in the next two Olympic Games as well. But except for that, Tokyo was actually the first time that China accepted a citizenship switcher, and that was in track and field. But this Games really is a departure because there are the two high-profile women, Eileen Gu in freestyle skiing, and then the figure skater, Beverly Zhu, or Zhu Yi. And there are also about 15 men and 12 women on the ice hockey teams who are born in other countries.
What about the tennis players, Peng Shuai, who, of course, had gone missing for a while, and the IOC has been rather engaged here. Is this something that we should perhaps concentrate on, or do you think it's a side issue?
Well, I think it's an important issue, but I do think we need to keep the larger perspective, keep it in consideration. For example, the IOC has come under criticism for not doing enough, but as someone who's been studying the IOC for a few decades, I'm sort of amazed that it did what it did, because except for trying to achieve a 50-50 representation of women and men athletes in the sports in the Olympic Games, it's not exactly a progressive organization. And, you know, IOC members come from all over the world, and I can imagine that many of them are not actually sympathetic to Peng Shuai and just wish the whole thing would go away. So I think Thomas Bach, the president, has to keep his constituency in mind. And keeping that in mind, it's pretty bold of him actually to even get involved at all and to do what he has tried to do.